Brighter Media Group original.
Hey everyone, welcome in to the Versed Podcast. My name is John. So glad you're here for this daily pursuit to become more perceptive to what the Bible says. Today we're reading from the book of Isaiah, chapter 43, verse 2. I heard Elisabeth Elliot define suffering as having something you don't want or wanting something you don't have. And that can come in many extremes, however big, however small. But I think that is a really appropriate definition. You know, there have been hard things in my life, just like I'm sure there have been in yours. And I can't say that I know specifically right now what you're going through, but I can say that I know the one who knows. And it's through the deepest suffering that I've learned the deepest lessons. And that if we trust God for it, we can be assured that He has this under control, that He has a loving purpose, and that He can turn something terrible into something wonderful, and that our suffering is never for nothing. We're reading from Isaiah today, and just so we can set a little historical and biblical context to what we're reading today, Isaiah was married to a prophetess. He was a prophet himself, and he had at least two sons. He prophesied under the reign of 4 Judean kings from 739 to 681 BC, and it's likely that he met his death under a fifth king, the evil King Manasseh. And the Christian tradition actually says, as early as the 2nd century, actually identifies Isaiah as one of the prophets whose death was described as the prophet who was sawn in two. Isaiah likely lived in Jerusalem, prophesied to a nation that had turned a deaf ear to the Lord. And instead of serving Him with humility and offering love to their neighbors, the nation of Judah was offering meaningless sacrifices in God's temple at Jerusalem, committed injustices throughout the nation. The people of Judah turned their backs on God and alienated themselves from Him, which created the need for Isaiah's pronouncements of judgment and also declarations made in the hope that God's chosen people would return to Him. And we're reading in chapter 42 today, and there's actually a shift in Isaiah. Those first 40 chapters are these chapters of judgment, and then it shifts into this hope that is coming, this future that is coming, a future blessing that is actually the future suffering of Jesus as the Messiah and His return. It's the prophecy of that. So there's a lot of hope in the verse that we read today. So let's do that. Isaiah chapter 43, verse 2. When you go through deep waters, I will be with you. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. When you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up. The flames will not consume you. Have you been forced by your circumstances to get down to the very foundation and bedrock of your faith, of your life? I have. And what I've witnessed for me are things that are unshakable, that God is my refuge and my strength and my sustainer. There's no intellectual answer to the age-old question of why. Why we go through those things. Not on this side of heaven anyway. Not an intellectually satisfying answer, but peace? Yep. And peace is a person. Jesus. And when you're really going through it, it's these words from Isaiah that are an encouragement. He is the one who loves me. He is the one who gave Himself for me. And the terrible truth is that there is suffering. And the question we face and that we ask is, where is God? Is God paying attention? And why doesn't He do something? I've learned on one hand that when I'm going through pain and when I'm experiencing pain, to actively take the steps to look for God, to look for Jesus, to look for angels in the midst of my pain, because it's promised that He is there with us in it. It's a practice that I learned in a retreat that I've done about healing painful memories, about actually having to go back there in my mind and describe what I see and what I think and what I feel, and then praying and actually going back to those painful moments and looking for God in those moments, because He does show up. So what I've learned is that when I experience future pain is to look for God so that I can answer that question, where is He? I can't answer where is He if I'm not looking. And why doesn't He do something? Well, the answer is that God has done something. He is and He will. And that's because of the cross. The cross that is so despised by the world. A horrific event. The worst thing that can be done to a human is the very best thing, because that saved me. Maybe it saved you too. It saved all of us. And this act of love, in God sending His Son to die, is brought into harmony with suffering. Love and suffering intersect to form a cross. I heard this quote. I don't remember who said it, so forgive me, but it says that joy is not the absence of suffering, but the presence of God. My suffering has thrust me and forced me to run to God, my hope and my refuge. I know Him in a way I never would have known before because of my suffering. We can't even fathom the love and the plans God has for us. Our suffering is not for nothing. Let's take a moment like we do every podcast. If you're new to the podcast, I'm excited for you. If you've been around a long time, you know that this is a special moment for all of us to just take a minute and pause. We'll play some music underneath here, but it's a time for you to reflect on that verse, reflect on what was revealed, meditate if you'd like, pray to God if you'd like, or sometimes just be still and just take a couple deep breaths and just connect with God. It's really important to do, and I love it. I appreciate it every time. So let's do that, and then we'll talk on the other side. Thank you, as always, for listening to the podcast today. I hope you are finding hope and encouragement in it and that it is bringing you value. If you need further resources for your studies, if you want to know what I use to build these podcasts, those are linked in the episode notes, as well as a link to my social media and a form to ask any questions you have or a verse you'd like to submit for a future episode, and anything you'd like included to dive deeper into. That's in the show notes. If you wouldn't mind, if you haven't yet, in Apple Podcasts, leave a rating, leave a review. That helps the podcast grow and helps more people discover it. And that is always a beautiful thing, that we can join together with more people in this pursuit to be more perceptive to what the Bible says. So, as always, make hope louder today. We'll talk tomorrow.